Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to tell you, when I first looked at the stack of research you sent over for this one, I laughed out loud.
You laughed. That's not quite the reaction I was expecting, given, the subject matter.
Well, it was a confused laugh.
Yeah.
100%. Because I'm looking at the title of the main source, Digital Grace, and I'm seeing words like grief, mourning, bereavement,
Right, all the heavy stuff.
all the heavy stuff. And then right next to them, I'm seeing conditional formatting, cell validation, and Google Sheets.
It is a bit of a collision of worlds, isn't it?
It's a collision of universes. On
Yeah.
one side, you have, the most profound, messy, organic human experience
Right.
possible. The death of someone you love.
Mhm.
It's tears, it's chaos, it's hugging people you haven't seen in 10 years. And on the other side, you have a spreadsheet.
The coldest tool in the shed.
The coldest, most rigid, grid-lined tool ever invented by, corporate America. It just seems so
The-
clinical.
It sounds like a paradox,
Mm.
or worse, it almost sounds offensive in a way.
Honestly, yeah, a little. It feels detached. If I'm in the middle of planning a funeral, the absolute last thing I want to do is figure out pivot tables.
It sounds like we're trying to turn a tragedy into a project management seminar.
Right.
So you have a steep hill to climb today. You have to convince me and everyone listening that opening a spreadsheet in the middle of a funeral week isn't just, busy work for people who can't handle emotion.
I accept the challenge. Because the core premise of Digital Grace is actually, I think, quite beautiful. It argues that in times of emotional chaos, logic isn't the enemy of emotion.
Okay.
Logic is the container for emotion.
A container.
Think of it this way. When you pour water, you need a glass. If you don't have a glass, the water just spills everywhere, right? It's a mess.
Sure.
In this analogy, grief is the water. It's overwhelming, it's powerful. The spreadsheet, that's just the glass. It's an act of care. It's a stabilizing force when the ground is literally falling out from under you. Okay, I'm listening. I'm intrigued. But before we get into the how, the columns and the rows and the tabs, we really need to dig into the why. Because the sources talk a lot about the biology of what actually happens to our brains when we lose someone.
Right. And this is so critical. We have to stop thinking of grief as just being really sad.
Yeah.
We need to look at the neurology of it.
Mm-hmm.
The sources all describe grief as being cognitively disruptive.
Which is a very polite scientific way of saying your brain turns into scrambled eggs.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The moment you get that phone call, the one nobody ever wants to get, your body is just flooded with cortisol and adrenaline.
Yep.
Your limbic system, which is the emotional reactive center of the brain, it lights up like a Christmas tree.
A fight or flight system.
It's screaming. And because all your cognitive energy is rushing there, your prefrontal cortex, it powers down.
And a prefrontal cortex is the CEO of the brain, right? It handles the logic, the planning, the executive function, the decision-making.
Exactly. So right when you need to make 50 high-stakes decisions in, like 3 days, your decision-making hardware goes offline. It's a biological mismatch. Your working memory shrinks.
That's when you walk into a room and completely forget why you're there.
Yes. Or you read a paragraph in a contract from the funeral home and the words just swim on the page. You can't process it.
I think everyone listening has felt that fog, that grief fog. But here's the real cruelty of the situation. The world doesn't care about your fog.
No, it does not. Not at all.
The world shows up with a clipboard and a deadline. The funeral director needs the obituary text by 4:00 p.m. today. The cemetery needs a check. The caterer needs a final head count by tomorrow.
And relatives are texting you from the airport asking for hotel codes and what's the dress code?
It's a massive collision. Your internal world is collapsing into a black hole, but the external world is demanding high-level event planning precision from you.
And that gap between what your brain can do in that moment and what the world demands of you, that is where the suffering compounds. That's where families start to fight. That's where critical things fall through the cracks.
So the mission of this deep dive, then, isn't to teach you Excel shortcuts because they're cool.
No, not at all.
We are exploring how to use a shared Google Sheet to essentially outsource your executive function. We're going to build an external brain for your family because your internal ones are, temporarily out of order.
It's a survival guide for a modern crisis.
To make this real, I want to try something. Instead of just talking in abstracts, let's use a hypothetical family. We'll call them the Millers.
The Millers. Okay, I like it.
Let's say the Millers just lost their mom, and there are 3 adult siblings. First, you have Sarah. She's the oldest. She's the type A, super responsible one who usually takes charge of everything. But right now, she's barely holding it together.
Okay, I know Sarah.
Then you have Ben. Ben is the mess. He loves his mom. He desperately wants to help, but he's scattered. He forgets to text back. He loses his keys. He means well, but he's not reliable.
Every family has a Ben or two.
And then there's Emily. Emily lives across the country. She feels incredibly guilty for not being there at the end, so she wants to do everything to make up for it. But she's remote, so her help can sometimes feel unfocused.
All that is a very, very standard combustible mix of personalities and grief styles.
So in the normal course of events, without a system, what happens to the Millers?
It's a disaster.
Sarah tries to do everything herself because she doesn't trust Ben. Ben, trying to be helpful, goes and orders flowers but calls the wrong florist for the wrong day.
Mm-hmm.
Emily floods the family group chat with like 100 ideas for songs, which just overwhelms Sarah. Eventually, Sarah explodes at Ben for messing up the flowers. Ben shuts down completely. Emily starts crying because she feels useless and far away.
And the funeral happens, but everyone hates each other by the end of it. The original grief is now compounded by all this new resentment.
Exactly. So we're going to use the Millers to test this digital grace theory. Let's start with section 1, the philosophy of organization in crisis. The source material makes this really interesting point. The structure isn't about being a robot. It's about removing friction.
Yes. Think about Sarah, the oldest sibling. If she is standing at the visitation, shaking hands with her mom's friends, but in the back of her mind she is terrified that nobody remembered to pick up the printed programs from the copy shop. Is she present in that moment?
No, not at all. She's physically there, but mentally she's in logistics mode. She's running a checklist in her head.
Exactly. She isn't grieving, she isn't connecting, she isn't sharing stories, she is project managing. The whole philosophy here is that if you write it down in a trusted system, you can let it go from your mind.
You organize the logistics so you have the freedom to fall apart.
I love that phrasing. Organize so you can fall apart. That's perfect. Because if you don't, you have to hold it all together all the time. And that's just not sustainable.
And if you rely on winging it, which is what, let's be honest, most families do, you run into what the sources call the duplicate and drop phenomenon.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Duplicate is when, say, both Emily and Sarah call the caterer to confirm the head count because they didn't coordinate. It's annoying, it's a waste of time, but it's not a catastrophe.
Right.
But drop is dangerous. That's when the obituary deadline passes because Sarah thought Ben was doing it and Ben thought Emily was doing it and Emily assumed Sarah had it covered.
So nobody does it.
And that's where the fight starts. It's not just a simple mistake. In that context, it becomes, I thought you had it. You never told me to do it.
And in that high-stress, high-grief environment, that isn't just a logistical failure. It feels like a betrayal. The story your brain tells you is, you didn't care enough about mom to write the obituary.
Oof. Yeah, that's the narrative that starts forming.
And it sticks.
Oof.
For years.
Okay, so we need a system. Which brings us to section 2. Why Google Sheets? Why this specific tool? Why not just a nice notebook? Sarah, the type A, probably has a very nice moleskin planner. Why can't she just write it all down there?
For a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is what in project management they call the bus factor.
The bus factor, that sounds ominous.
It's a grim term, I know.
Yeah.
But the question is, if Sarah gets hit by a bus, or, more realistically, if Sarah collapses from exhaustion and needs to go take a nap because she hasn't slept in 3 days, where is all the information?
It's in her purse, in her notebook.
Exactly. So Ben and Emily are completely helpless. They have to wake her up to ask for the florist's phone number. A physical notebook, or even just one person's brain, creates a gatekeeper.
It makes Sarah the bottleneck for every single decision.
Yes, it creates a single point of failure. You need a system that is democratized, where the information belongs to the family, not to one person.
And it has to be accessible. The sources are really specific about this. They say it should be Google Sheets, not Trello, not Asana, not some fancy specialized funeral planning app. Why so specific?
Ubiquity. Total ubiquity. Look, let's go back to Ben. Ben is, as you lovingly described him, a mess.
A lovable mess.
A lovable mess. If you ask Ben, in the middle of his grief, to download a new app, create a login, verify his email, learn a Kanban board interface, he's just not going to do it.
He's going to tap out immediately. The barrier to entry is too high.
Way too high. But Ben almost certainly have a Gmail account. He knows vaguely what a spreadsheet looks like. It's low friction. You send him a link, he clicks it, it opens, it works on his phone, it works on Emily's iPad across the country.
And it's a living document. I think this is a crucial difference between a sheet and, say, a long email chain or group text.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Imagine Sarah sends a group email on Monday. with the plan. Service is at 2 p.m., dinner at 5 p.m. Then on Tuesday, the church calls and says, "So sorry, there's a conflict. We need to push the service to 3 p.m."
So Sarah sends a new email. Correction. Service at 3.
But Ben, who's out running errands and overwhelmed, doesn't see the second email. He only read the first one.
So Ben shows up at 2 p.m. He's angry. He's confused. He thinks he's late when he's actually early.
Exactly. With the Google Sheet, there is no version 2. There is just the sheet. You go in, you change the cell in the time column from 2:00 p.m. to 3:00 p.m. The next time Ben, or anyone, looks at it, he sees the correct information. It is the single source of truth.
Okay, let's get practical. This is section 3, architecting the sheet. We are going to build this thing for the Millers right now. Sarah sits down, opens her laptop. She goes to sheets.new. She's staring at that blank grid. This is the moment where most people freeze. What is the very, very first thing she does?
Before she types a single thing in a cell, she names the file. And she needs to be specific, not just funeral or planning. It should be something like Miller Funeral Planning Mom's name.
Why so specific? Seems obvious.
Because in 3 years, when you're looking through your Google Drive, you won't know whose funeral it was. Or, more immediately, if Emily searches her drive for Mom, she needs to be able to find it instantly. Clear naming is step 0.
Okay, step 0. Done. Now what?
Now, before she even thinks about tasks, Sarah needs to make a decision about permissions. This is less about tech and more about social engineering.
Right. Who gets the keys to the car? Who can actually change things?
Exactly. Google Sheets has 3 main levels: editors, commenters, and viewers. Sarah, Ben, and Emily, the core planning team, they are editors. They need to be able to add tasks, update statuses, change numbers.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about Aunt Linda? Aunt Linda's flying in, and she has a lot of opinions.
Aunt Linda is a viewer. 100%. Maybe, if you're feeling generous, a commenter. But you absolutely do not want Aunt Linda, who may not be tech savvy and is very emotional, accidentally deleting the entire budget tab while trying to scroll on her phone.
So setting someone to viewer access isn't an insult, it's a safety measure.
It's data protection. You are protecting the plan from well-intentioned but potentially chaotic input. You're preserving the integrity of your single source of truth.
Okay, file named, permissions set. Now, the source material is very clear about this. Do not make one giant endless list.
Direct. That is the path to panic.
Yeah.
A single list of 500 rows is terrifying. It induces overwhelm. The solution is to use tabs, those little buttons at the bottom of the screen. We are going to break the monster into manageable pieces.
So tab 1, what's the first tab we create?
Tab 1 is the overview or dashboard. This is your landing page,
Yes.
the anchor.
And what goes here?
Just the immutable facts, the things that will not change. Full legal name of the deceased, date of birth, date of death. Maybe not Social Security number for security reasons, but definitely the case number from the funeral home, because you'll need that a dozen times.
Why do we need to write down her name? We know her name is Mom.
But do you know how to spell her middle name correctly? With one N or 2. Is there an E at the end? When you're filling out the death certificate forms or writing the obituary or dealing with insurance, you will second-guess yourself. The grief fog makes you doubt basic facts. Putting it here on tab 1 means you only have to look it up once.
It also stops the repetitive questions from the wider family.
Absolutely. The service date, time, and location should be in bold, giant font at the very top of tab 1. When Cousin Mike texts for the 3rd time asking, "Hey, when is the service again?" No, you don't have to type it out again. You just send the link to the sheet. Check tab 1, Mike. All the details are there.
You're training people to use the system.
You are. Gently.
Okay, tab 2. This feels like the big one. Task delegation. This is where we save the Millers from killing each other.
This is the stress killer tab. This is the engine of the whole operation.
So how do we set this up? Because just a simple to-do list probably isn't enough, right?
Right. It needs structure. You need, at minimum, 5 columns. Column A, cast description. Be specific, not flowers, but order floral arrangement for casket. Column B, assign 2. This is the magic column.
Okay, let's talk about assign 2.
This column is the antidote to the bystander effect. The bystander effect is that psychological phenomenon where, in a group, everyone assumes someone else is handling it.
Someone should probably order the flowers.
And so nobody does. In the sheet, you don't write someone. You use a drop-down menu with the names, Sarah, Ben, Emily, and you assign order floral arrangement for casket to Ben.
But wait, Sarah, our type A, is terrified to write Ben there. She knows Ben is the mess. Her every instinct is to write Sarah next to every single important task because she knows she'll get it done right.
And that is exactly how Sarah burns out by Tuesday afternoon and ends up sobbing in her car. This sheet forces Sarah to delegate, but, and this is the key, it also gives her a mechanism to verify without nagging.
What's the mechanism?
Column C status. This is another drop-down menu. It should have 4 options. Not started, in progress, stuck needs help, and completed.
Ah, so Sarah doesn't have to text Ben every hour. Hey, did you call the florist yet? What about now? Did you call them now?
Which Ben absolutely hates and makes him feel incompetent.
Right. Instead, she just opens the sheet.
She just glances at the sheet.
Mm-hmm.
If she sees the status for Ben's task is in progress, she can breathe.
Yeah.
She knows he's working on it. She backs off. If she sees the status is stuck needs help, she can call him and say, hey, Ben, I see you're stuck on the florist task. What's up? Do you need the phone number?
It completely changes the dynamic from nagging to supporting.
It depersonalizes the management. It's not Sarah checking up on Ben. It's the family checking the status of the project.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge shift.
And it creates visibility. For Emily, the sister across the country, she can look at the list, see what needs doing, and grab a task that she can do remotely, like write first draft of obituary. She just puts her name in column B.
Exactly. Now she feels useful. She's contributing in a concrete way, not just sending anxious texts.
Let's move to the really scary tab. Tab 3. The money.
The budget and expense tracking tab, the one everyone wants to avoid.
People hate talking about money around death. It feels so tacky.
Right.
It feels disrespectful, like you're bean counting a tragedy.
It feels like you're putting a price tag on love.
Yeah.
The funeral industry is very good at leveraging that guilt. If I buy the cheaper casket, does that mean I love Mom less?
Exactly. But the reality is funerals are incredibly expensive. The average cost is what, somewhere between $7,000 and $12,000 now, and that bill comes due almost instantly.
And it's rarely one person paying from one account. In the first few days, the siblings are all pulling out their personal credit cards for different things. This is where what I call credit card roulette can destroy families later on.
Explain that.
Sarah puts the $500 deposit for the caterer on her Visa. Ben pays $300 for the flowers in cash. Emily books a $400 Airbnb for out-of-town guests on her Amex. It's all happening fast. Nobody is keeping track.
And then 6 months later, the estate is being settled, and Ben says, hey, I spent like $2,000, and Sarah says, really? I don't remember that. What was it for?
And now they are fighting about money while they are still deep in their grief. It gets ugly.
So the budget tab prevents this. What does it look like?
It's all about radical transparency. Column A item, e.g. casket, catering, flowers. Column B vendor. Column C estimated cost. Column D actual cost. Column E, this is the most important one, paid by. And column F payment method.
Paid by. That's the key.
Yes. In that cell you write Sarah, Visa ending 1234, or Ben cash. It acknowledges the financial contribution in real time. There's no argument later because it's right there, timestamped.
It also helps you make those really hard decisions in the moment, right?
It allows for what the sources call informed trade-offs. Let's say the Millers agree they have a total budget of $10,000. They start filling in the estimated costs. The casket is $4,000. The burial plot is $3,000. Suddenly they see they only have $3,000 left for everything else.
And Ben, in his grief, really wants a symbolic dove release that costs $500.
In a normal situation, Sarah might have to be the bad guy and say, Ben, that's a waste of money, that's stupid. And it becomes a fight about values.
Right.
With the sheet, Sarah just points to the screen. Ben, look at the bottom line. I hear you on the doves, but we have $3,000 left. If we spend $500 on doves, that means we can't afford the catering for all of Mom's friends. Which one do you think she would have wanted?
The spreadsheet is the bad guy.
The math is the bad guy. It objectifies the decision. It's not Sarah versus Ben. It's the Miller family versus the budget. And that is a massive emotional shift.
I want to talk about tab 4, the vendor log, because you mentioned earlier that the fog makes you forget conversations, and that is so true.
This is your CRM, your customer relationship management tool for the funeral. You are suddenly dealing with a florist, a funeral director, a priest or officiant, a cemetery representative, a caterer, maybe a musician.
And they are all calling you from blocked numbers or random cell phones.
And you're taking these calls in the car, in the grocery store aisle, while crying in the bathroom. You will not remember what you said or what they promised. You need a simple tab with name, role, for example, florist, phone number, email.
But the sources say to add one more crucial column.
Yes. The most important column is last contact notes.
Give me a scenario how that helps.
It's Tuesday morning. Sarah wakes up with a jolt of panic. Oh my God, did we ever confirm the final number of vegetarian meals for the caterer? Her cortisol spikes. Her first instinct is, I better call them right now.
But maybe Ben already called them yesterday.
Or maybe Sarah herself called them and has completely forgotten. So instead of panicking, she opens the sheet, goes to the vendor log, and looks at the entry for caterer. In the notes column, she sees an entry from yesterday. Ben spoke to Steve at 3 p.m., confirmed 5 veg meals. All set.
The panic just evaporates.
Immediately. She doesn't have to make the call. She doesn't have to duplicate the work. She can trust the system, and she can go back to sitting on the couch and drinking her coffee with her family.
Okay, let's move to the softer side of this. This is section 5, the service details, tab 5. This feels like the creative part, the songs, the readings, the eulogies. Why on earth does this need a spreadsheet?
Because the creative vision has to meet logistical reality. This tab is what event planners call the run of show.
Like a script for a TV production.
Exactly. You can't just say, and then we'll have some music. That's not a plan. You need to break it down. Order of service, item 1, welcome remarks, speaker, Pastor John, allotted time, 2.00, 2.00, 2.0, 5 p.m. Item 2, hymn, title, Amazing Grace, verses be sung, 1, 2, and 4.
Why do you need to be so specific as to list the verses?
Have you ever been to a funeral where the organist starts playing verse 3 and the entire congregation goes silent because they didn't print the lyrics for that verse in the program?
It's so awkward, yes.
It breaks the spell. It pulls everyone out of the emotional moment and into a moment of confusion. This spreadsheet ensures that the person designing the printed program knows exactly what to type. It ensures the organist knows exactly when to stop playing.
And maybe more importantly, it forces the family to agree on these things ahead of time.
Yes. If Ben wants to play Stairway to Heaven on a loop and Sarah wants only Ave Maria, you see that conflict on the sheet 3 days before the service. You have time to talk about it. You don't find out when the music starts playing and half the family is horrified. It forces consensus.
Okay, tab 6. I love this concept. The parking lot tab.
Or the mental holding space.
Explain how this works with the grief brain we talked about.
Grief brain is incredibly intrusive. You'll be trying to fall asleep, and suddenly your brain will scream, does Dad have a suit to be buried in that actually fits? Or you're brushing your teeth and you have a sudden thought, we should play that one Beatles song Mom loved.
And if you don't do something with that thought right away, it just loops over and over.
It loops. It creates enormous anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other thing that happens is you compulsively act on it. You text Sarah at 2 a.m., does Dad have a suit? And now Sarah is awake and anxious.
So instead, you get up, you open the sheet on your phone.
And you go to tab 6, which is just a blank space called Notes, Questions, Ideas, and you type, check on Dad's suit. You type, idea for music, Beatles song in my life. Once it is written down, your brain trusts that it's been captured.
Yeah.
It allows you to stop thinking about it.
It's cognitive offloading. You're telling your brain, I don't need to solve this right now. I just need to not lose the thought.
Exactly. And then the next morning when you have your daily check-in call with the family or when you meet with the funeral director, you just open tab 6 and you go down the list of questions. You looked incredibly organized, but really you were just dumping your anxiety into a digital bucket.
I want to pause here and address the listener who is thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but I'm not a tech wizard, and my eyes are swollen shut from crying. I can't look at tiny rows of text. This brings us to section 6, design and user experience.
This is so critical. You have to design this sheet for the user you are today, not the user you are on a normal Tuesday at work. The user today is exhausted, emotional, sleep-deprived, and probably looking at a tiny phone screen through tears.
So no size 10 font in light gray.
Absolutely not. Minimum font size 12, but ideally 14. Use high contrast black text on a white background, and most importantly, use what I call the traffic light system.
Red, yellow, green.
In that status column on the task list, use conditional formatting so that when you select completed, the entire cell turns a bright, satisfying green. When it's stuck needs help, it turns red.
Why does that simple color change matter so much?
Because when you're in that state of grief, you're not really reading, you're scanning. You want to be able to glance at the sheet and see a sea of green. It gives you a tiny dopamine hit. It's a visual confirmation of progress. Look at all the things we've handled.
It feels like you're winning, even when you feel like you're losing at everything else.
Precisely. If everything is just black text on white, it looks like an endless, unconquerable list of chores. Green says progress. Red says pay attention here.
And what about freezing the top row?
Non-negotiable. It takes 2 clicks. Go to View Freeze one row.
Explain why for the non-Excel user out there.
When you have a list of, say, 50 expenses, and you scroll down to row 50 to add a new one, The headers at the top of the columns disappear. You're staring at a blank cell. You think, wait, is this the estimated cost column or the actual cost column?
And if you put the number in the wrong one,
You mess up all the math. You get frustrated. You feel stupid. You throw the phone across the room. Freezing the top row means those headers, item, vendor, cost, they float. They follow you down the page as you scroll. It anchors you. It reduces cognitive load.
let's talk about the mobile reality. We mentioned the Millers. Sarah might be the one setting it up on the laptop, but Ben is at the florist. He's on his iPhone trying to look at this thing.
You have to design for the smallest screen. Do not write long paragraphs in the cells. If Ben has to click a cell and then scroll through 400 words of text on his phone to figure out what he's supposed to do, he's not going to read it.
So keep the task descriptions short.
Keep them short. Order lilies, call Pastor John, draft obituary. If you have a longer thought or a bunch of details, put it in the notes column at the very end, or better yet, put it in a separate Google Doc and just link to it from the sheet. The sheet is for data, not for journaling.
I want to circle back to the emotional mediation aspect. We touched on it with the budget, but let's go deeper. The source says the sheet acts as a neutral mediator.
It acts as the third object. In family systems therapy, there's this idea that a dyad, which is just two people, is inherently unstable under stress. A triad, which is two people and a third object, is much more stable.
So when Sarah and Ben argue, it's a dyad, it's face-to-face, it's personal.
And it's immediately about their entire childhood. It's about mom always liked you best. It's about you were always the irresponsible one.
Right, it's loaded.
It's completely loaded. But when Sarah and Ben both turn their bodies to look at the sheet on the laptop screen, they are no longer face-to-face. They are standing shoulder to shoulder, looking at a third thing. They aren't looking at each other. They are looking at the problem together.
So it's not Sarah saying, I need a head count by Friday.
It's them both looking at the screen, and one of them saying, oh, look, the caterer's deadline on the sheet says we need a head count by Friday. It depersonalizes the demand. It dramatically lowers the emotional temperature in the room.
That's fascinating. Okay, section 7, adaptability. Because plans change all the time. The Millers decide on an open casket, then they see the body and they change their minds and decide on a closed casket.
And this is where a paper-based system totally fails.
Mm.
If you wrote open casket in pen in a notebook, now you have to scratch it out. It looks messy. It looks like a mistake.
And visually, seeing a crossed-out plan, it can feel like a failure, like you did something wrong.
In a sheet, you just type over the word, the change is clean. Or even better, you use what the source calls compassionate adaptation. You add a comment to the cell that says, change to closed casket per family decision on Wednesday.
It tracks the history of the decision without the mess.
And the tool doesn't judge you. It just updates. And while we're on that, let's talk about security and the afterlife of the spreadsheet.
Right. So the funeral's over. The guests have all gone home. Is the sheet dead? What happens to it?
Most people's instinct would be to just delete it. Just abandon it in their Google Drive.
Get rid of the painful memory.
But the sources suggest something really moving. The sheet's job transitions. First, in the weeks immediately following the funeral, it becomes a closure tool.
For the thank you notes.
The single worst task in the world. Trying to write 200 coherent thank you notes when you're at the bottom of your grief. So you add a new tab to the sheet. Gift tracker. Column A, gift. AG flowers lasagna.
Yeah.
Column B, from the Jones family. Column C, notes sent, with a simple checkbox.
It stops you from sending 2 notes to the same person, or worse, forgetting the person who brought over that amazing lasagna on the first night.
Exactly. But after that, after all the bills are paid and the notes are sent, what happens then? Years later, the sheet becomes an artifact.
An artifact, like in a museum.
In a way, yes. A family museum. I've heard these stories from people who used this method. They keep the sheet. They archive it. Because if you open it up 5 years later, what do you really see?
You see a to-do list for a really bad week.
No. You see something else. You see the names of your family members in the assigned to column. You see a sea of green completed cells. You see Ben, completed. Sarah, completed. Emily, completed. You see the timestamps. You see the little comments where you debated the songs.
We see the village.
You see a digital map of how your family came together to catch you when you fell. It becomes this incredible, tangible proof of love. Look how hard we all work together to honor Mom. It creates a narrative of competence and collaboration in the face of tragedy. We did this. We survived this together.
That is surprisingly touching for a spreadsheet.
I told you it was beautiful.
You did. So let's bring this all together. We've covered the fog of grief, the biological need for an external brain. We've built the tabs for the Millers, the dashboard, the tasks, the budget, the vendors, the service plan, the parking lot. We've talked about how to use it to stop fights before they even start.
We have.
What is the final ultimate takeaway here? If someone listening takes only one thing away from this entire deep dive, what should it be?
It's that you don't organize to be perfect. Nobody's going to come up to you after the funeral and give you a grade on your event planning skills. You don't get an A+ for a well-formatted spreadsheet.
Right. That's not the point.
The point is that you organize to protect your energy. You have a very finite amount of emotional and cognitive bandwidth during this week. Every single ounce of energy you spend wondering, wait, did I remember to call the florist, is an ounce of energy you cannot spend mourning your mother.
That's the trade-off. Every minute on logistics is a minute stolen from grief.
That is the trade-off. The entire goal of the spreadsheet is to make the logistics boring and automatic so that the emotion can be vivid and present. You want the logistics to be so handled, so invisible, that you can actually be present for the eulogy, present for the hug from a long-lost friend, present for your own tears.
It's using a cold machine to protect your warm humanity.
Precisely.
So here's a thought to leave you with. We spend a lot of time on this show, and just in life in general, complaining about technology. Screens are bad, phones are disconnecting us, data is cold and unfeeling.
And I mean, a lot of the time, that's true.
It is. But in this one specific, terrible moment when the human hard drive is crashing and overheating, maybe the most human thing we can do is to lean on the digital. Maybe the spreadsheet isn't the opposite of grace. Maybe, here in 2026, this is just what grace looks like.
Digital grace.
Something to think about. If you or someone you know is going through this right now, we really hope this helps, even just a little bit.
Take care of yourselves out there.
And take care of your spreadsheet. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.